A good death. Maga was about to die for the 14th time. She had bitten into a rotten apple yet again. Its putrid flesh had, as always, infected her with carrion shade. The actress went through all the motions of stumbling to her death while shouting her final words for all to hear. "Oh, but how wondrous a dream is life. Only now, too late, do I wake to see its myriad of splendors," she bemoaned. With a puff of smoke and glittering powder, Kindred made a grand entrance upon the stage. As per tradition, they were played by one actor, his head covered by two opposing masks. He approached Maga, the white mask of lamb facing her. "Hark, do I hear a plea for my keenest arrow? Come, child, let the warmth of your heart fade into the cold embrace of oblivion." Maga refused, as she had 13 times before. Any nuance in her performance was buried beneath her ear-splintering delivery of her scream. On cue, Lamb spun around, revealing the second mask, that of Wolf. "There is naught ye can do to stave off thine end," growled Wolf. "I am but a young maiden. Please, let my piteous cry fall upon all 4 of thine ears." The audience seemed enraptured by the unfolding dramatics of the Orphanellum Mechanicals, with the twin threats of plague and war on the tongues of those in the neighboring protectorates. Death dramas were all the rage. Dengel, the actor playing both Lamb and Wolf, descended upon the young actress, awkwardly bearing wooden fangs. Maga offered her neck, and at the threat of Wolf's bite, she triggered the device sewn into her blouse's collar. Ribbons of red fabric unspooled to the delighted pips and yelps of the audience. They'd gotten what they paid for. By the time the mechanicals had staggered back into their wagon and set off in the direction of Needlebrook, there were no stars to be seen. Instead, a veil of cloud stretched across the night sky. Needlebrook always delivered a good audience. Illusion, the company's owner and sole dramaturg, explained once more. He staggered around, drunk on his old accolades, as well as the wine Parr had gifted from the locals. The night wore on, and the troupe had descended into bickering. Traya and Denji lambasted the playwright over the quality of his plots, which fell into a predictable structure. Tragedy strikes the maiden, death finds the maiden, death takes the maiden. Illusion argued the complicated plot detracted from a good death scene. Maga, the youngest of the bunch, agreed with Traya and Denji's diagnosis, but kept her mouth shut. Had she not stowed away in the wandering troop's wagon, she would certainly be somewhere far more miserable. Lucky for her, the Mechanicals had recently lost several actors due to an Illusion's insistence on complete artistic control. Because of his attitude and obvious mediocrity, they were facing a drought of the flesh faces. And so, the Orphanellum Mechanicals agreed to contract Maga to die in all their dramatic scenes for the foreseeable future, for which she had been grateful. Illusion was still smart from Denji and Traya's words when he motioned to Parr, their wagoner, to stop and make camp. The inebriated entourage set out his bedroll in a pride of place next to the wagon. He then threw the rest of the bedding into the nearby long grass. "Ungrateful players can sleep in the wilds," Illusion spat, "where they hopefully shall find their manners." The rest of the troop built a fire and swapped stories. Denji and Traya had fallen asleep in each other's arms while whispering potential names for their unborn child into each other's ears. They had natted on about the day the traveling company would stop in Jandal, a town so perfect and peaceful they would set aside their vagabond ways to raise their child. Maga moved closer to the crackling fire, so its pops and whistles would drown out the irksome affections of her traveling companions. But sleep never came. Instead, Maga tossed and turned, thinking about the looks on the audience faces as the coiled spurts of blood unfurled from her neckline. A pretty maiden struck dead by her own naivety was all the theatrical pomp Illusion could muster, but the crowd lusted after that gruesome facade. Eventually, she left her bedroll and set out into the woods to soothe her unsettled mind. In the dead of night, Maga came upon a low grassy mound with slabs of standing stone at its base. Although she could not read the inscriptions, her fingers traced the familiar etching of Kindred's twin masks. This was a place of the dead, a burial site built long ago. She felt a chill on the back of her neck that compelled her to look up. She was not alone. Maga immediately understood what she saw, for she'd encountered a crude impersonation of them the night after night. But poor Denji couldn't begin to instill the dread washing over Maga. Before her, perched on the weathered barrow archway, was Lamb herself, flanked by her ever-faithful counterpart Wolf.
"I hear a beating heart," said Wolf,
his black eyes twinkling with delight.
"May I have it?"
"Perhaps," replied Lamb. "I sense she's afraid. Speak, beautiful one. Tell us your name." I would have yours first," stammered Maga, stepping back. Her slow escape was halted by a speedy wolf, who materialized unsettlingly close behind her. He spoke directly into her ear.
"We have many names."
"In the west, I am Ina to his Ani," said Lamb. "In the east, Farya to his Wulyo. But we are kindred everywhere. I am always Lamb to Wolf, and he is always Wolf to Lamb." Wolf reared up and sniffed the air.
"She's playing a boring game," said Wolf. "Let us play a new game, one of chasing and running and biting."
"She's not playing, dear Wolf," said the Lamb. "She is frightened and has lost her own name. It hides behind her lips, afraid to come out. Worry not, dear child. I have found your name. We know it, as you know us, Maga." "Please," Maga stammered. "Tonight is not a very good night for—" Wolf's great pink tongue lolled out of the side of his mouth and proceeded to cackle.
"All nights are good nights for pouncing,"
said Wolf, laughing. "All days are good, too," Lamb said. "With light comes a clear shot." There's no moon tonight," cried Maga. She used what Illusion had taught her, to gesture a grand, so those in the back could see her movements. It is hidden by a blanket of clouds, tucked away from mine eyes and yours. Without a moon, what will be the last thing that I see?" "We see the moon," replied Lamb, as she caressed her fabled bow. It was always there." "There are no stars," said Maga, trying again, this time gesturing smaller and speaking quieter. "No menagerie of twinkling diamonds, glistening in the midnight hue. What a more beautiful view could one hope for when once meets lamb and wolf?"
"This Magok thing is playing a new game," grumbled Wolf. "It's called stalling."
Wolf stopped moving and cocked his head back to the side. He turned his sideways snout towards Maga before speaking.
"Can we play chase the Maga thing and bite her to bits?"
Wolf clenched his fangs together for a loud effect. "Let us ask," said Lamb. "Maga, do you prefer Wolf's chase or my arrow?" Maga was trembling now. Her eyes raced to take in every last detail of the world around her. It wasn't such a bad place to depart. There was grass, there was trees, there was an ancient archway, there was a stillness in the air. "I would prefer Lamb's arrow," she said, looking at the rough crests of bark on the trees. "I imagine myself climbing to the highest boughs like when I was a child, only this time I never stopped climbing. Is that what it is like to go with you?" "No," said Lamb, "though it is a nice thought. Fear not, little maiden. We are just having our fun. You have come to us tonight. We have not come to you."
"I cannot chase the Maga thing,"
said Wolf, with a hint of disappointment in his voice.
"But there are other things nearby, other things ripe for chasing and biting. Hurry, Lamb, I am hungry."
"For now, know that your theatrics have pleased us, and that we will watch them until the day we meet again." Wolf passed over Maga and disappeared into the woods. The shadowy beast snaked away through the fields of tall grass. Maga looked back toward the weathered barrow, but Lamb was gone. The actress fled. When Maga returned to the encampment, she found it in utter ruin. The wagon she had only just begun to call home had been ransacked and reduced to a smoldering husk. Bits of clothing and ruined props lay strewn across the campsite. She found Denji's body near where he slept. He died protecting Tira, whose corpse lay behind him. Judging by the trails of blood, their deaths had not been slow. They had dragged themselves towards each other, their fingers intertwined in one last caress before death. Maga noticed that Illusion had managed to kill 2 of the bandits before being burnt to a crisp along with Par in the wagon. The only thing that remained untouched was Denji's lamb and wolf masks. Maga picked them up and held them in her hands. She placed the lamb mask over her own eyes and heard the voice of Wolf.
"Chase the Maga thing."
The maiden ran into the distance to Needlebrook, never once looking back. The golden round was filled to the brim with a sea of twinkling eyes, all glittering in excitement as the velvet curtain. The kings sat in the theater with the queen and their advisors, all eagerly awaiting the onset for the dramatics. Everyone hushed as the black curtain lifted to reveal the actors. Maga sat in a quiet dressing room under the stage. She heard the crowd fall silent as she studied herself in the mirror. The luster of youth has faded from her eyes years ago, and left her with a long shock of silver running through her hair. "Madam," said the stagehand, "you're not in costume yet." "No, child," Maga said. "I only dress in the last moment." "It is the last moment," said the young stagehand, holding the final two pieces of Maga's costume. The same lamb and wolf masks from her days with the Orphelum Mechanicals. "May your performance be blessed tonight," the stagehand said. Maga prepared to leave for the stage. She slipped the masks over her head. There was an odd chill from the dark barrow that crept down her spine. She welcomed it, as always. She was enthralled by the audience as she glided onto the stage, embodying Lamb's graceful movements. She thrilled the crowd with her rendition of Wolf's playful savagery. She, as the twin deaths personified, eased the suffering of her fellow actors, or ripped out their throats, until the crowd stood to their feet and erupted into thunderous applause. It was true. All audiences loved a good death, but they loved Maga's more than any other. Even the king and the queen were on their feet in the praise of her work. But Maga heard no applause, saw no ovations. She didn't feel the stage beneath her feet, nor the hands of the fellow murmurs in hers as they bowed low. All she felt was a sharp pain in her chest. And when Maga looked out over the audience, every single face was either a lamb or a wolf.